Hello,
So
everyone. My name is Ben Spector. I'm one of the product managers and the head of solutions at Zementum. I'm joined today by the wonderful Yusuf Yegane. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure I ask you every time
it's
and
very
always
good. It was
forget.
very good.
Yeah, good. So today's topic, we want to talk about standardization. And Yusuf and I had a call a few weeks ago to coming up with the topics for this. And really it came down to this bottom line about not letting your clients bully you. We both run MSPs. I used to run an MSP, which I sold and exited a couple of years ago. And yeah, Yusuf still runs an MSP, but also runs a couple of other businesses that we'll get into. And it's so easy to allow your clients to bully you into offering services that perhaps to. Anyway, let me introduce Yusuf. He actually wears what I would consider three hats, although probably across two businesses. The first one, he's the managing director of Microbyte Solutions, which is a reasonably large MSP, certainly of a size in terms of revenue and headcount that I would certainly have aspired to get to, but never quite managed it. But he also runs an outsourced NOC SOC help desk business, white label IT, who provide that sort of outsourced master MSP service globally. And then the third hat, not really a separate business, but involved with both of those businesses, is as an M&A person. Really, he acquires a number of MSPs and has also done some consolidation around the white label side of it. So Yusuf, I've given you a bit of an intro, probably stolen some of the thunder, but do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's absolutely fine. And thank you for the flattering intro. You're absolutely right. I would say two primary businesses, white label IT and Microbyte. One was born out of the other. And of course, I'm involved in a few other small companies along the way for web, SEO and things of that nature. And both businesses have grown through acquisitions. So we've learned a lot of interesting lessons along the way.
So obviously I sort of alluded to being of a certain size that perhaps we all aspire to get to. Could you give us a little bit of kind of headline information, headcount, revenue, the MSP?
Absolutely.
And
So as an MSP, we've been running for over 15 years. I mean, the name was Microbyte came around sort of 20 years ago, but for the first 5, it was myself, pottering about in a van, repairing computers for anyone and everyone, which actually will lead into the subject of what we're about to talk about. Anyway, so over the sort of last 15 years, we have gone up from, a handful of employees up to we're around the 50 mark now, with three offices, and actually 4 offices now, and look after around 120 clients on the MSP side. But in addition to that, we do a lot of cloud revenues and telecoms, so 3CX, VoIP, that sort of thing. In addition to that, over the last sort of 5 years, because we were offering out of hours support, we decided that there was a gap in that particular market, and we started white label IT, where we would effectively offer MSPs what they don't have by way of overflow support, out of hours. And out of hours is really the big one that took shape, obviously, over the last 2 to 3 years with what happened globally. So that side of things is growing as well. And more recently, only 3 months ago, we acquired a company called Microtex. And Microtex was another white label IT provider. I say white label IT provider. They provided help desk services to telecoms companies, IT companies, MSPs. And so that was a really good fit. And yeah, and that's kind of how both businesses have come about, really.
cool. Thanks for that intro. I think actually the Microbyte was slightly larger than I realized. The last time we probably spoke about that information, I think you were probably more like 40 headcount.
Yes, so as a total, around the 50 includes both businesses. However, the headcount goes up and down a little bit just because of the international operations and scaling
Yeah.
up and down for out of hours. So by the end of certainly this year, we'll be well around the 55 to 60 mark in terms of total headcount, and more if the resource was available, to be quite honest with you.
Makes sense. So getting on to the main topic then, standardization, I want to talk about this, I think, in three very specific verticals. First of all, from the perspective of you as an MSP owner, what is it about standardization that's enabled you to grow the business to the extent that you have? The second, then I think we'll move on to the white label side of it. I know a lot of the MSPs I speak to recognize that one of the easiest ways to grow, there's a massive tech talent shortage. It's very difficult to hire, train, retain tech talent. And so outsourcing a lot of that tech resource to a partner like white label is probably one of the easiest ways to grow. With hindsight, I think I should probably have done it rather than struggling with my own engineers for so long.
Me too.
And then also the last angle is around the M&A. I'm sure a number of the people on watching this today are, whether they know it or not, are probably going to go on to get acquired at some point, or maybe they're in the acquirer seat thinking about, what should I be looking for in an acquisition target. I guess one of the things when it comes to M&A acquisitions is that I would always say is I did not expect to sell my business when I did. I had no intention of exiting it. It came about entirely accidentally. And if I had planned a year or two earlier for the exit, rather than suddenly deciding, I've had enough and getting out, I'd have probably started to change a lot of things about the business. And I think, again, standardization comes into that to some extent. So let's go, for that first vertical we wanted to talk about, the MSP side of it. Can you tell me about the things that you've standardized within the Microbyte business and how important that standardization has been for the growth?
Yeah, so it's interesting going back over the sort of the last 15 years, and I think every IT company can relate to this. I mean, I grew up in a kind of break fix IT support model where the only real expectation was when it breaks, repair it at sort of, but by whatever means necessary. We would still have soldering irons in our toolbox when I was growing up. I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but as times sort of moved on, I became acutely aware that we're repairing the same problems over and over again, and there is no end to this. And when there's no end to something, if you're a little bit impatient like I am, you tend to get frustrated because it doesn't feel like you're moving very fast. So out of that sort of IT support model, which is how it was, you're selling hours, came managed services. Now, managed services came over from the States, and they were apparently ahead of us for quite some time in the UK. But it became clear that with all the wealth of different technologies coming together, it was not enough to expect a help desk just to answer the phone and fix everything. And again, I vividly remember being called out to site to fix a PC. And then while you're there, someone has gone to PC World and, plugged in a printer. And then someone else has bought a modem that they're trying to swap out for their thing. And there's all of these different things coming around, but no end point as to, well, how is it supposed to look? Because everybody's just going willy-nilly trying to grow their businesses with what they think is the right technology. And so that kind of provided a bit of a conundrum because, we were trying to, or I was trying to take on a staff member or two. And what I found is I'm having to teach everybody so many different things that actually they're not fixed. The variables are constantly changing. So no, sorry, Harry, not this week. Don't put them into that Active Directory group. We've changed it and it's over here on this DC, or, and that ever-moving environment was very workable in an IT support model because the expectations were quite low. But when you're then moving into the realms of things are supposed to be working and they're supposed to be working the same way every single time, I soon realized how difficult it was to onboard staff. And you know, I hate to say it, but in those early days, you know, there are people out there my age who you know, didn't make the cut, but I thought it was because they just couldn't handle it. Whereas in actual fact, no normal human being would have been able to handle some of the things that we were trying to standardize and get everybody to understand all of the time. So it kind of, it became stressful. It became really, really stressful. And after about 5 years of that, we'd got to, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 7 people. And we're just chasing our tails, you know. And Gary Peaker talks about this. I think he calls it the spiral of death. And he's absolutely right. You constantly are trying to improve what you do as a business, but you're not being allowed to focus on that because your customers are driving the agenda all of the time, and it's not their fault. So that eventually trickled into, okay, how are we going to get rid of one problem? What's the biggest problem that we get? Well, the first place to start is, and this is going back a bit, but the first place to start is, okay, who does the most tickets? Which client has the most tickets or is billing the most hours for you? And then we realized we didn't even have that really. You know, we had loose ideas of who was billing the time. Sorry, which client was occupying all our time, but we didn't know specifically what areas. Like you could say printer issue, but what, you know, what is the printer issue? Is it because it's USB network? Is it because the printer's old, new? So, you know, that's kind of when the curtain dropped and you realize, okay, there's a lot to do here, and there is no end to what you need to know how to keep mandatory and static. So we started off with, what's the first thing we're going to standardize? Routers. Okay. And every MSP who's, again, similar era to me will I'm holding back my words there, but we'll remember Dratex. Okay, so it was Dratex was the router of choice.
Was going to be the go-to I'd mentioned for an example of a bad a bad standardized bit of kit.
It seemed like
but it served a purpose.
At the time. It did. And you know what, we can't badmouth Dratex because there was no one else there. There was no one else there at that budget end of the market where the product would do whatever you wanted it to. And actually it worked pretty well for the most part. So, you know, we focused on routers. But then of course you realize, okay, brilliant. You've standardized on the hardware, but well, not everybody knows how to configure that. So then you have to start drilling down into, no, that client has that port open, that client has that bit of firmware, they have this version of X, Y, and Z. And so you end up realizing you need to go all out, and every bit of equipment you sell, you need to have definitive build standards around that, and you need to educate your staff and you need to educate your clients that this is why you're doing this. Okay. And that process, if you think about all of the technology that most MSPs deploy to their clients, that can be long-winded. So we started with routers, then we moved to access points, then we moved to server brands. You know, clients calling up saying, we want HP because it's £100 cheaper. And, you know, my son-in-law Fred installed a HP server and he thought that was great. And those sorts of debates end up, I'm really sorry, then you're not for us. And why? Well, because our engineers know how to use this bits of kit. Oh, are they not smart enough to use the other stuff? And, you know, we've literally had that insulting backlash.
Quite offensive and aggressive line of questioning. I remember the same.
Really?
Well, yeah, and actually, ironically, it was around the Dratex routers. You know, they had it's you know, the scale of the client we were dealing with at the time, the 2 to 10 employee, you know, end client, where we were probably their first IT provider. They'd been ticking along on their ISP provided piece of crap fry and egg router.
Technicolor.
Yeah. Oh, God help us. And so suggesting that Dratex router replacement, you know, there was a lot of backlash around, well, you know, why can't they configure the Technicolor? And it was you trying to quite defensively come up with an answer to that. So I'd love to hear actually, you know, what can you say to the client that is trying to bully you? But, you know, it brings us back to the whole title here. What do you say to the client trying to bully you?
So you cannot fight fire with fire is something that I discovered over the years. And anytime I'm thrown back into that position of defense, you know, there's a saying, when you're explaining, you're losing. Okay. And I really do believe that's true. So how we learned to retort or recover our position against clients when they come and say, well, no, we want this particular route and that's how it is. You have to really demonstrate the overarching why and make your position an exclusive position with the client. So it's not that we can't do your equipment, it's that we all know in our industry that this is a perfectly good bit of equipment, and our processes internally and our staff are trained to deliver this. Are you looking for, and this is where you have to go with the value discussion, which I know is very cliche, but it's, are you looking for saving £200 to £300 to keep your bit of kit because you don't want it to go to landfill or a secondhand shop or wherever else? Or are you looking to save an hour a month when one of your members of staff has to run under the cupboard and deal with that router because we don't know how to? And that discussion, that takes confidence. And you know, it's all well and good telling MSPs and telling founders and execs and senior people who are trying to build businesses to go and have that confidence to push the customer back. But it's the absolute number one thing you have to do if you have faith in your standards, because, and this kind of goes back to the premise of your question, if you are trusting the customer's opinion, then what do they need you for? And I think that is where you position yourself as a real MSP or as just an IT support bod, IT support company, or worse, as we say at MB, you know, you're just being an IT butler. And that is what you end up becoming. So how you have that discussion is by removing the conversation out of the technology and discussing on what they're really trying to save by them thinking they know better on that particular bit of hardware. And you know what? Half the time you will probably not be successful, but you need to know that that is not the client for you then. And that is not the client that is going to engage or be led by you. Now, moving into the sales realm slightly, you can make allowances. You can make allowances, and some clients need a carrot for you to be able to demonstrate your worth, right? But if you haven't got that paradigm pegged with you and your staff and everyone you're working with to know that, yes, we've taken this client on, they've got these terrible limitations, I'm afraid support, you're going to have to do the very best you can with this rubbish that they've got plugged in under the stairs. But I promise you, within 3 to 6 months, if they're not on this journey, we will call it quits. So that management of expectation has to happen there, or you end up with a lot of disgruntled staff who are constantly rebooting equipment, you know.
So the standardization conversation actually then is happening at two levels. It's happening at a technical level internally, deciding what those standardization decisions should be. But then it's the sales people, and by sales people, I also include your account management function, because account managers should fundamentally be salespeople. They shouldn't be techie people. So, but they need to be the ones that are armed and confident to have that conversation. And so most MSP owners are probably technically minded leaders, need to be able to arm their salespeople with enough of the argument to be able to confidently have the argument. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is a great way of putting it. One of my mentors came and said, every salesman, if you tell them to go and sell a pen, and they can get away with selling a pencil, they will. And that's not that's not because they're salesmen, that's just human nature, right? If this looks close enough, and I will you know, I'm incentivized in that way, I will deliver something close. And I'm the same. So this isn't a criticism. You know, I'm sales as well. Like you have to be when you start any business. But as you're expanding your sales teams, and again, I think Gary Peaker alludes to this, and a lot of MSP gurus, you have to be really clear on your offering and not move the needle at all until the salesperson has had that discussion at a higher level with the client, so the client recognizes, or the prospect recognizes, what you're in this game for. It is not just to sell this bit of equipment and plug it in. If it's, you know, if you're acting as a VAR and you're just buying LastPass and selling LastPass, and you know you're really having a few touches and then it's configured, well, then it probably doesn't matter so much. But if you are being asked to manage a network, which most of us in IT are, you need to prime your sales force to not sell anything without absolute confidence that it can be delivered. And so I would say in the early days, that's where we certainly fell far short, because you know what it's like, you get salespeople or a salesperson, and they want to start delivering results. Of course they do. Like, no one doesn't want to be able to do their job well. So all of a sudden the MSP starts loosening the leash a little bit. Okay, let's get their motivation higher. Let's keep their morale up. So, okay, yeah, fine. All right, we'll sell this Packard Bell with Windows Home PC just this once, and then we'll go down the road and buy a Windows Pro machine when they get a domain later on, right? But you just
And if
have to
anyone
be
listening hasn't done exactly that thing, I will be astonished, because I have done that more times than I would like to acknowledge.
And you will always have to go and tidy up that mess later on. That's what you have to accept. And if you can accept that, and you've got a process for tidying up that mess, like, absolutely fine. So you're right. The conversation has to happen on multiple levels. I think there's a perfect opportunity to talk about how we kind of define those standards for sales. We put together something called the maturity matrix. And yeah, I know it sounds very cliche, but
Keanu Reeves, I was thinking.
Keanu, yeah, that's fine as well. But what it was okay, and I can't say this was my idea. You know, these things have been done over and over again. But when you, what do they say, eat your own dog chow, you kind of get committed to believing in the solution you've built, and the people around you can see that belief. And so it was really important we didn't just take something off the shelf and say, there's a menu, we're going to sell these products. Like, it had to be homegrown. So in the maturity matrix, which happy to share, we have kind of 12, 13 key areas that when we take on a client, we're aiming for. Okay. And the sales force are aiming for as well, right? So it's switches, it's servers, it's, you know, PCs, and it goes to, it's not too detailed that it becomes boring, but it's easy enough to understand so that the prospects you're speaking to know what you're getting at, but nuanced enough so that your teams know what they're working with. And so you have lines such as access points. Are they silver, which would be any old TP-Link plugged in, or 5, 6 of them plugged in around a network? Have you got those main socket extenders in your business, or are you gold and you've got, you know, I can see you cringing with that thought. I've seen it all, right?
I mean, it's great technology for your own home. It is not the right technology for your clients' critical businesses. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And so you know, we have those lines in every single one.
Yeah.
So you have access point switches, PCs, servers, blah blah blah, and then you take your client on a journey. So it's, you're not here right now, but when you get here, you will have potentially an incentive. So you might get a few % off your, you know, your seat cost. But what we really promise you is you'll be on the phone less to support, and there'll be less call outs. And, you know, we'll come out to see you anyway, because that's part of our package. But at some point in the future, you'll be wondering why we're on site. And that was what we always used to aim for when we were narrowing down these standards. So yeah, quite a few quite a few levels, I think, that standards apply to.
And I think where you talk about that maturity matrix, I'm going to totally shamelessly plug the fact that the QBR module in Zementum is built to do exactly that. It's there to help you track the client's roadmap, show them how those standards align with the roadmap that you want to be taking them on. You know, you can mark something as being effectively not fit for purpose all the way up to being gold standard. You can demonstrate the budget they need to be thinking about for next year and the timeline for that budget as well, by kind of assigning whether it's maybe Q3 of this year or Q1 of next year, and the amount you need to spend. Now, there was one thing you touched on that I want to dig into a bit deeper, which was incentivization of those salespeople. Now, I see so many conversations threads on the various kind of MSP forums asking about comp plans and, you know, bonus structures, commission structures for salespeople. And it was definitely something I struggled with greatly while we were trying to standardize, because as you said, ask a salesperson to sell a pen and they'll quite happily wander off having sold the pencil. My sales
No disrespect
people
to any
were
salespeople on that, by the way.
no, of course, and you know, everyone here is in one way a salesperson. You know, one of the things I'm learning is that actually by being a product person, my role is to fit the right solutions into those businesses, which is ultimately selling. But so that, you know, how can you shift the focus of commission plans from sell a pencil if you can get away with it, because towards actually delivering what you want them to be delivering? Because, you know, if you're just targeting them on revenue or giving them a percentage of closed deals, obviously they're just going to try and close whatever deal they can because that's how their commission comes off the back of it. Have you got any really smart tips around designing clever comp plans that actually incentivize delivering the right standardized results?
Yes. Well, yes and no. It's always a moving target. And you know, Lewis Livingstone, our end, who built a lot of those models in terms of how our incentivization worked. It was a constant change. I would say that the number one thing would be to incentivize a new salesperson enough that they're not pressured in those early days to sell too fast. So the comp plan and the basic, in my opinion, needs to be enough for them to not feel that pressure from day one to just go and sell. Because actually, if we're honest, it takes, and you know, you hear this from, you know, senior execs at LinkedIn and Facebook and all the rest of it. It takes 6 months by the time somebody really has got their feet under the table and got comfortable with the products that are being offered. So I think plenty of ramp up time for salespeople to get comfortable. We actually built presentations, tests, questionnaires. We would actually encourage our salespeople over the last 10 years to, you know, get on the help desk, take some calls if they can, really to get a feel for what it is and some buy-in to that culture, not to just go and think, you know, I don't know, we can sell a PC, but all we've got is a laptop in stock that's completely wrong. Get it out there. So ramp up period for salespeople with enough compensation that they're not rushing to try and get out there. Serious effort put in to visits to clients to understand, like physically see what it is that they're selling that's being installed. You know, show them the racks, show them the servers, show them as your marketplace, whatever your product stack is. I personally believe there has to be a reintroduction of that deep learning of the product. And then the second thing is, which is quite obvious, I suppose, you must be confident incentivizing those sales lines that you really want to get moving on, but think about it in a different way. So yes, we all want to incentivize our managed services contracts. So there you go. You get your biggest lump if you sell a contract for 2 years. But in actual fact, is that really what most salesmen are able to go out and sell straight away? Like, it kind of isn't.
No.
So, you're setting the bar so high and the expectations so high, and it's going to end in disappointment for 90% of salespeople. So be prepared to flip your incentivization on some of the lower products in your managed services, in your maturity matrix equivalent, as you say in Zementum. You can carefully gear up the products that you're allowed to sell, but then you can lead that in to a journey of expectation for the salespeople. So you can say, conventionally, and this data is very easy to get now. So like historically, a client that we took on board 12 months ago actually only wanted, I don't know, to buy block time off us, or they only wanted to buy 10 machines off us. But that client, 6 months, 12 months down the line, look at all these additional products they later bought that resulted in a support contract, So if you can carefully isolate those other sales lines and incentivize them probably more heavily than your managed services agreements, for instance, especially in those early days, that's certainly a good tip to get salespeople looking, in my opinion, in the right direction. And the final thing on that is make sure they don't go off script. Like, the maturity matrix is there because this is all we're selling. And the worst thing, again, going back then, was like when we didn't have something like Zementum, and we didn't have a PSA, and we didn't have RMM tools. Anybody on the team could go in and just change a price or add a product. So, I found this new brilliant product line. Let's just
a
add
new
it in and
Draytech
sell
router.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think ironically, that's how we started selling the IP-PBX Draytech router, but that ended up being a success, fortunately. But yes, it's those, get rid of randomness everywhere you can find it, be it in sales, in the help desk, and in projects. Randomness and inspiration and innovation should be kept to kind of R&D periods of time, and never just be randomly rolled out into production.
Yeah, I'm conscious that we've lingered on the MSP bit of the pillar of the conversation for quite a long time, but I think it's been really important to set the scene. Every time I have these conversations, it almost gets me thinking maybe I should start another MSP next week. I think I take away these learnings. There's so many things I did so badly. A lot of what you said resonates a lot. The Draytech router is number one, and just selling whatever we could get over the line, because we were kind of small and hungry and thought we needed it. Actually, 90% of those cases completely backfired within the first year or two. Anyway, moving this on, the second pillar we were going to talk about was for an MSP thinking about moving towards outsourcing some or all of their NOC, SOC, help desk, whichever bits of those services. Can you tell me what it is that makes a real success when it comes to doing that outsourcing, and how standardization has an impact?
Yeah, so don't think you can just outsource all your problems, okay? That never works.
Bollocks.
Yeah, and we all, there might be some sectors that does work in, but managed services, IT is a complex machine. There is no other sector like it, and as people in managed services businesses, we're qualified to say that because we see what other businesses do and how they operate and the technologies they use. Like, if you want to know how a business works in any sector, go and speak to a managed service provider. They will tell you. So I think as a consequence, there's this bit of kind of thinking that's fallen into IT support companies, where they think, yeah, we can just outsource all of that particular problem, which is, let's say, help desk or out of office or whatever else. That doesn't work, because you need to be very conscious that the moment you bring in a provider outside of your business, they're not part of your culture. They're not part of those, water cooler discussions where you just know that that client is moving on that particular date and you're going to get 50,000 phone calls in. But when you are outsourcing, you're not going to have those conversations unless you're very disciplined, you have systems and processes, and you have standards. So the best case scenario for outsourcing, let's cut to white label IT, I suppose, where we provide out of hours support for MSPs as a primary product. And then as a second product, we provide overflow support. So they haven't got enough engineers, they want to all go out to lunch, but they need some assistance in a particular project because there's going to be lots of calls. You're going to need to manage that relationship. So there's an overhead to that. Don't just think you can divert the phones over or forward the emails over to somebody that doesn't know you, because yeah, as we do, we'll do the very best we can, but there needs to be a whole discussion around how you want us to handle your clients, how you want us to engage with them on particular tickets. And the best success stories we've got with MSP outsourcing are the MSPs who are disciplined enough to know exactly what it is that they want to outsource. As in, Pika calls about defining the edges of your product box. So put all the lines, put all your words inside of what you're trying to deliver. Anything that falls outside that box, you need to be prepared to walk away from. It's very similar when you're outsourcing any service. So for instance, let's say MSP A wants to outsource any phone calls after 6 p.m. Okay, well, how are those phone calls going to be routed? What is the IVR message going to be? Who's going to deal with the escalation point if the outsourced person can't deal with it? Are you then going to make sure you've got someone available out of hours? How are we going to know who's available out of hours? Now, fortunately, we have extensive onboarding processes for all of these things. And now it's coming to the crux of it. Not every MSP has an answer for all of those onboarding questions. And everyone that you can't answer, every point at which the MSP has not defined exactly what it is within the service that they're providing to their client or trying to outsource, your service is going to get a little bit worse. It's going to get a little bit slower. And so, zooming out and keeping it really basic, have you got a PSA? Because we have some people trying to outsource their help desk where they're using Excel sheets, and it works. It can work as long as you know exactly how your Excel sheet works and you're prepared to teach us how it works. We'll use your Excel sheet, but it's not ideal. And at some point, we're going to put an end to that, just to let you know.
That doesn't align with the standardization thing. Allowing your clients to turn up with an Excel sheet just because that's what they have does not sound to me like standardization, Yusuf.
Exactly right. So you should not get any ideas if you do decide to start another MSP, Ben, to come to us with an Excel sheet. But we, fortunately, the MSPs that we work with us on the same basis as clients work with us on MSP. You've come to us with an Excel sheet. You're on a journey with us. And at some point, we're going to be pushing and encouraging you to move into a PSA, a proper PSA. You're going to have a CRM. You're going to have a sales tool. And it really kind of relates to your sales point earlier on. How much do you let people get away with when you're trying to win a new client? Well, you better be damn sure that client has a good reason for having an Excel sheet or whatever bad technology they've got, but you need to set the expectation they're not going to be on that forever. And again, that whole process is very carefully defined, and that journey has to be defined. So if you're looking at outsourcing,
speak to Yusuf.
No, I don't want the phone calls. Yes, but just get the basics in place. Define exactly what it is you're trying to outsource. If your help desk are stressed because they don't know what to do with calls, that's very different to receiving too many calls. And you need to identify and really drill down into what it is that you're trying to outsource. And I mean, at a bigger level, every sales team needs a product, again, saying it like Zementum. There are others. Every company, every IT company trying to take it seriously needs a PSA. They all need an RMM, and those things need to be set up really carefully to work with an outsourced provider to get the best output, really.
Yeah. The last pillar possibly the most controversial one. The M&A part of standardization, because I know previously you have mentioned that perhaps standardization isn't brilliant. I've listened to some conversations at some of the big sort of ConnectWise, Kaseya, Datto, the big US conferences talking about M&A. And a lot of those conversations talk about risk, and the more standardization you have, in a way, there is a bigger risk. But kind of let me pass that question over to you. Looking at that whole standardization, if you're buying a business, what level of standardization are you ideally looking for, and how does that impact your ability to integrate that business with your own and make it a success?
Yeah, really great question. I think there's probably a preconception that because you've got a PSA, you're a really standardized business. We've discovered that not to be the case, but it's not to say those basic elements shouldn't be there as a matter of course. So the things that I think really move the needle when you're looking at merging or acquiring a company, an IT company, let's say specifically, is, do all of the clients have similar technology set up in a similar way? And are they being billed in a similar fashion? Do they have a sales process that looks the same most times, where, yes, there's always going to be the rogue sale because you just want that particular client, but is that systemic? So is every single one different? And I hate to say it, but we've been wrong before over the years, where we probably didn't do as much due diligence as we should have, and really delve into those standards across some of the clients, and it just makes your life a little bit harder. Would you not do it because of those deviations from standards? Probably not. We would do it. There's no acquisitions we'd look back on and say there wasn't a purpose for it. But with everyone we go through, we become a little bit more specific about the variance and how much we will allow to deviate. So, I mean, I'll give you a really specific example. Most IT companies, 10 years ago, every IT company wanted to get into selling VoIP and telecoms, right? So everyone was selling broadband lines, everyone was selling analog lines. What we found a few acquisitions ago when we purchased the telecoms business was, 17 different suppliers for broadband lines. Well, how did this come about? Well, because, this line, we bought 10 over here, then this one came out with £1 cheaper, so we went over to that one. And you see that, and it's not all of them, because of course at some point they tried to consolidate.
Been there. I have done that. I have saved £1 here and there on a broadband line and introduced an entirely additional supplier in order to achieve that. So yes, that resonates.
Absolutely. Right. And the integration of that is way harder after an acquisition than you realize, because you then will have probably lost a little bit of tribal knowledge within that business. You will have to recover some of those relationships, so you're then going to have to go and organize the downtime to move all of those things. So the standards that you need to focus on are, in our experience, if there are going to be obvious things that we're going to need to change to move the needle, are they going to impact the client? Is that going to mean downtime for them? Is it going to mean having an awkward discussion that sorry, we're no longer going to be supplying these particular routers, we have to move over to here? And you need to determine whether you have the capability and the staff to do that, to bring it all into line, because you can never have enough people willing to get involved with the integration of a business, in my opinion. You can never have enough cultural injection from your core into the new tribe who are coming in, and that's something, and I guess my final tip on that would be, involve as many members of your existing team as you can, bring everyone into it, because the biggest issues you will have, again, ironically with standardization, is standardization of culture. And this is the way we do things around here. And those two things clashing, that will cost you more than any single contract you might lose if you get it wrong.
Yeah. I've got one final question for you, but before that, I'd love to just ask if anybody watching this has got any questions for Yusuf. It can be about the MSP business, can be about the white label business, can be about M&A. Please do ask any questions you might have front of mind. What are the biggest red flags when you are doing your due diligence or having conversations with a prospective buyer? What are those really nasty red flags?
Big inconsistencies with pricing with no explanation around discounting. So random discounting can soon catch up with you as a business. And it's very easy to think that you can reverse those discounts and those changes by building relationships. But often a lot of those clients have been onboarded not because of a relationship, but because of a pricing discount. And so if you see lots and lots of big variation in individual client contracts and costs, that's a big red flag. Lack of billing standardization is another big one. And all of these things are kind of indicators towards later on, when you lift up the hood, what else you're going to find. Because typically what we've found is if an MSP is disciplined in one area, they're pretty good in most of the others. If they're undisciplined in loads of areas, there's going to be some real shocking areas as well later on that you're only going to discover after you start talking to customers and clients. So yeah, billing, you know what, this isn't a red flag, but this is something that came up very recently that I didn't realize how much time and effort it would take, is if you have a model around billing where you're billing at a regular time, a regular date, be it quarterly, monthly, whatever else, and your clients know that that is how you bill. If you go and merge with somebody or acquire a business that isn't that disciplined around that, so they might have some being billed on this day, some being billed on that, some might have pro rata periods, some might not. When you've got 10 clients, you can handle that. When you've got 50, that is a lot of work to re-standardize and bring in, because you can't just send out new invoices. You have to be prepared for those conversations of why you moved my bill date. Oh, that means I will get another 2 days here, but I'll be paying another 50 quid for it. And so your accounts team can be inundated with a lot of those quite trivial queries, but only trivial when you're looking at it as a block of 50. As an individual, those are meaningful things to each of those clients, So that was quite an interesting point, I thought.
Yeah, I think billing standardization was one of the things that I hit really, really early on. When I first started my MSP, we didn't have a PSA. I'd never even heard of a PSA. I didn't know they existed. I didn't know what they did. I remember being sold my first PSA that I didn't want, need, or ask for by a lovely sales rep at Datto back almost 10 years ago now. But it was life-changing, the amount of standardization it helped us to introduce around billing, admin, the revenue operations. And then I guess, Zementum hosting this webinar, the whole point in Zementum as a platform is to help drive standardization and automation across the sales processes. And like I said earlier, sales includes account management. We've got that maturity matrix functionality in the QBR module. If you're an existing Zementum customer, check it out. That is literally what that module is built for, is to help take your customers on a roadmap. And taking them on that roadmap, helps you to identify new opportunities and keep focus on those new opportunities, but B, enables you to further drive that standardization, gear up for the other pillars of the conversation, gear up for outsourcing if you think that might be part of your growth strategy, gear up for an acquisition at some point, either buying or selling. I'm really
100%.
personally offended and disappointed that there haven't been any questions in the Q&A.
I'm just
Given the
not
number of,
interesting enough, Ben. I
I
told you
know.
that.
Well, do you know what? We've lost 3 people across the entire session, which I think is brilliant given the number of people here. So clearly a lot of people have found
Very
this
good.
really interesting. But I am personally mortally offended that there are no questions for either myself or Yusuf. Um,
I might not be able to answer them,
someone
so that's probably a good thing.
hold on. There might be a reason for this. Apparently, we might have chat disabled. Not that I have any idea how to enable that. No idea. Never mind. I'm just going to share a final slide with contact details in case anyone wanted to get in touch with either myself or Yusuf. Oh, we've got a question from Lewis. How can Zementum scale with MSP growth as a one-man band going to a large org? I'm not entirely sure what that question means. How can Zementum scale with MSP growth? I mean, Zementum as a platform helps to drive standardization. You can use things like the templates to deliver standardization to your sales reps to ensure that the proposals are always going out in the same way. You can use automation rules to ensure that the same steps are being followed as you build out that sales team. Really, I think as Yusuf was saying about getting everyone bought in, partly it's about getting everyone bought in, but it's also about ensuring they have the tools to actually be able to send things out to brand standards with the right content, with the right services. And I think to me, templating as much as possible within the business helps with that. I don't know if that answers the question. I'm hoping it does. I would love if someone can tell me how to enable chat. I didn't know that was the case. Maybe whoever's administering the webinar can can make sure that's not disabled next time.
I think just on that, sorry, Ben, just on that
Yeah, go
point,
on, of course.
what I've noticed personally with Zementum and products like Zementum, actually specifically Zementum, it builds fences around what people can do. And you can very quickly find out when, salespeople, pre-sales, advisors, whoever are going off script, when you have everything in one place, like in Zementum, where your menu set is defined. You can move clients through that funnel. Once you've built those fences around how far people are allowed to go off, it's not that they can't go off script and send random emails selling random things, but it becomes really obvious when someone is going off script. When you don't have something like Zementum, scaling is very, very difficult because everybody probably ends up going off script because there isn't a clearly defined, easy to follow script. And I think that's where pivot, is a pivotal point of the value in something like Zementum from early on. It's certainly helped us in that regard.
Cool. Always good to get a testimonial from one of the larger MSPs using the platform. So yeah, as I was saying, contact details. If you want to reach out to me about Zementum or frankly about anything else, feel free to drop me an email, ben@zementum.com. If you want to have a demo of the Zementum platform, zementum.com/get-a-demo, probably not the easiest URL to read out. And even more importantly, if you want to speak to Yusuf, I'm guessing you're happy for people to reach out. I've just shared your contact details, whether you want them shared or not. I don't really care. But I hope you have,
Thank you for your consideration.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you'll hear from people. If you've got any questions about scaling an MSP or outsourcing, I'm sure Yusuf will be delighted to hear from you.
Absolutely. Look, we love talking to MSPs, especially those that want to engage around growth. And, as I've sort of confessed today, we're happy to share everything we've learned over the last 15 years. And if that helps people take shortcuts in their business, even if 1% of what we discussed today was useful, it's been a success in my book.
One final question, I think, actually, what would be the benefit to outsourcing IT support instead of hiring more engineers in-house? I think this is definitely one for you, Yusuf.
Oh, I mean, the benefits are huge. you should have a resource in-house, because that's how you keep your culture and your connection with the clients. So there are some things that we always recommend MSPs keep in-house. But in terms of what's the benefit of outsourcing, I mean, huge. Number one, it's very difficult to hire engineers, especially now. You have to deal with individuals, train them, deal with holiday, deal with sickness. If you decide to move out of hours, or do larger coverage, well, then you need shift rotors. So effectively, for every one person you think you need 3. It enables you to very quickly offer new product lines to sell to your existing clients, and that value, that money effectively can be extracted quite quickly for a lot of clients that, for instance, want, I don't know, a shorter SLA, or they want coverage from 8 a.m. not 9 a.m. There's so many angles that outsourcing can bring. But again, going right back to the beginning, you can't just outsource everything, and you should think about opportunities in your client base, and the benefits that something like that would bring to your client. Because at the end of the day, everything comes back to the voice of the customer. What do your customers really want? If you deliver that, the money becomes a secondary issue always.
There is another question in the chat, but I think it's very, very tightly tied to what you just answered, which is, how do you keep the whole team engaged in the standards? Is there anything you want to add to what you'd already said that you think more specifically answers that?
Yeah, so this is literally something we talk about every day. There has to be a war cry, okay, a unification in your business that everybody gets behind. Now, I hate to say vision statement, mission statement, because everybody talks about those things, but it's vitally important everybody knows they're going on the same journey, okay? And you can't just say that once. You can't just have a poster on the wall that says, we believe in standards. It has to embody every single decision you make and every single question you ask, at least for 30 days, okay, at the very least, because that's how long it takes to breed new habits, we're told. So, for instance, we receive a bit of feedback from a customer, and we need to make sure every single employee across, doesn't matter where they work, gets that message. We don't just think you can send out a Teams message and everybody can get it. We don't think you can just send out an email or a phone call or an update to the PSA or an update in the attention field. It's all of those things all of the time. So your messaging internally, your marketing within your business is as important as your marketing outside your business, to help people all get into the same flow, And I'm not sort of over egging this. We have presentations, we have e-shots internally, we have 8 a.m. stand-up discussions where we talk about standards and why this particular thing fell out of line. And everybody knows that if they come to me with a problem, the first 2 questions I ask is sort of, what happened? How do you stop it happening again? And then when we've got those answers, there's a third question, which is, what do we put in place now? And who do we educate to make sure this thing doesn't happen? So your question is brilliant, but it's a lot of effort. Do not underestimate the amount of effort it is to bring people on the journey with you. But if you want to go offline and have a discussion about it, or whatever, more than happy to share some of the things we do in a bit more detail.
I hope that answers the question. Yusuf, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I know whenever
Likewise.
we have conversations, lunches, whatever, we always have a lot of fun. I think you're going to be at the CompTIA EMEA Partner Member Conference, 31st October, 1st November. So if anyone in the UK wants to meet up, I'll be there as well. Zem and Tamar are exhibiting. And then we'll be there's a mental health panel on the second day that I'm going to be joining. So, come along, have a chat to us. I don't think there's any other questions. So I guess it's probably dinner time, because you're still at the office.
I am indeed. Yes, my stomach's rumbling. Lucky you can't hear it on the mic.
Thank you very much for joining, and look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Thanks very much, guys.
Bye.